I want to talk to you today about something that Jesus said to Peter, and it's in 1 John chapter 21. No, not 1 John, I'm sorry. John, the Gospel of John chapter 21, verses 15 to 17. Jesus said to Peter, "Do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than these?" Now, talking about context, I've heard so many sermons where people say that Jesus was talking about, do you love me more than these other disciples, more than the other apostles? Do you love me more than these? But I want to put it in what we call true context, exegetical context. And here we have the scriptures. We can go to the Gospel of John, chapter 21, and we can start. I'm just going to read it. Do we have it up here? Okay. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John," or son of Jonah, some translations, "do you love me more than these?" And people, like I said, they always think he's talking about the other apostles, because he had just come out of denying Christ 3 times when he said he wouldn't. Hopefully I'll have time to give you background on that. And he said, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him the second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him a third time, "Tend my sheep." No, he said to him, "Tend my sheep." And he said a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was grieved because he had said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything." In other words, you know my failures. You know my weaknesses. You know my stupidities. You know who I am. You know I'm clay. You know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." What he said afterwards is very interesting. He says, when you were younger, you went where you wanted. You dressed what you wanted. You did your own thing. He says, but now that you are older, you've come to this point in your life, another shall take you by the hand and take you to where you would have never chosen to go, to do that which you would have never even thought about doing. And it says, when he said that, he was speaking of what manner of death he should die. Now, he's not talking about what happened to Peter historically, that when he was going to be executed, he said, "I'm not worthy to die a crucifixion like my Lord died," and that he was crucified upside down, which is just a whole different way of dying. But he was crucified upside down. He says, "I'm not worthy to be crucified like the Lord, even to die like he did." And so that's his notorious death. But it was not talking about that. He's not talking about the way he was going to be crucified. It's talking about death to self. Death to everything he knew in life. And this is why we get off message when we think about, "Do you love me more than these?" being the other disciples. Christ wasn't worried about it. You remember even when somebody said, "Hey," in that same conversation, "Hey, what about John?" And Peter said, "That's none of your business what I do with him. I'm talking to you. You follow me." He says, "Whatever I do with him, that's between me and him." That's putting it in the vernacular. You know what I mean? But that's exactly what he said. "You asking me about John, you worry about you." I remember seeing this little video about this little girl. She's about 2 and she can barely speak. She's trying to fasten herself in her own car seat, and she can't get it. And the mom says, "Here, let me help you." And the little girl looks up and she said, "You worry about your own self. I got this." I love that. She looked up, "You worry about your own self." Well, that's basically what Jesus told the disciple that said, "What about John? You worry about you. What's it like between you and God?" So many people worry about, "Oh, look what this guy's doing. Look at that's between him and God. You worry about you." And so this is what Jesus said to him. And so now when Jesus called Simon, or his name actually is Shimon, later Jesus named him Cephas, which means Petros, a rock, a stone, and which we translate as Peter. When he called him, he was engaged in an occupation. What was he doing? When Jesus called Peter, what was he doing? He was a fisherman. Now, I'm going to be brief because my time is running out. He was a fisherman. And some people say, well, he wasn't a very good fisherman because 2 times he'd fished all night and hadn't caught anything, and Jesus had to come by and fix it up. Have you lived 4 days? What I'm saying is, anybody who's done anything in business has good times and bad times, but that doesn't mean they're not good at it, especially something as variable as what an animal's going to do when an animal wants to do it. I mean, you can depend on certain things, currents or times, but there are so many variables, but that it's very easy. But he's good enough to where he was able to make a life. Now, what we have to understand, just even going back to the simple things, the fact that he was married and had kids and had his mother-in-law living with him, and no jokes about mother-in-law. You know, he had a very good mother-in-law. I can tell you about her historically. I could tell you quite a bit about her historically. But what it's saying is that how in the ancient, traditional, historical Jewish context that a man got married, he had to already have a profession, not be in training. He had to have a career. I mean, because the people didn't want to marry their daughter to little Jack Horner standing on the corner. You get what I'm saying? And so they have, you know, in Jewish society, they have the bar mitzvah and the bat mitzvah. The bat mitzvah is, two of my grandsons go to a private school, and about 70% of the students and professors are Jews. It's not a Jewish school, but they're just people from Beverly Hills, people in the movie industry or television industry and stuff like that. A lot of them are Jews, and so they're always getting invited to bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs. And that's when a girl's about 14 years old. In other words, it's the right to womanhood passage. And in ancient Hebrew society, she was marriage material. In Latin America, it's the same thing. At 15 years old, they had the quinceañera. The quinceañera meant that she is marriage material. She's a woman. She's no longer a child. She's a woman. It was the right to womanhood passage. The bar mitzvah is the right to manhood passage. Okay? And so what they do for the next at least 15 years is they're under apprenticeship, usually learning the skill of their father. And so by the time they're about 30, they're able to have their own business or skill set or something like that, and they're making their own money, they're established, and then they can ask the hand of a woman, because they can come with the bride price and say, I can offer your daughter this. And in Spanish or Latin, we call it the dote, you know. It's not buying a bride, it's saying to the in-laws, I can provide for your wife. I worked in North Africa for quite some time, and my daughters are gorgeous. You know, my wife is just knocked dead gorgeous. And you know, so we are mix of blood. Makes a nice conversation. My daughters are just, they are very beautiful. And so, like, one of the this wealthy Muslim merchant, very handsome guy, he came up to me. He says, "Your daughter is 18. This is much too old." He says, "I will give you 2 kilos of gold, 700 handmade carpets, 15 days of festivities. I own this property here. I own these buildings here. I own this property in another city." He says, I would offer you this for your daughter. And I said, "You see that pier over there? It's about 30 meters long. I want you to take a hike about 45 meters off that." Not a thing. I wasn't gonna. But I understood what he was saying. He's saying your daughter shall be well taken care of. you know. And that's what it was. You had to have something to offer. Now, but the father could not ask for more than what he was providing. The son-in-law can offer more than what he could provide, but the father could not ask for more than what he was providing. Does that make sense? You follow me? So Peter was married, and what was his job? A fisherman, which meant he was successful enough to ask the hand of this lady. But you know what? I know of his in-laws, and his in-laws were very well-to-do. And in my book, John Mark, you'll find out why. They were very well-to-do. They left an inheritance to their kids, and she was a widow, and we can find out a little bit more about them that's sex of Jesus once again. And so, the thing is, you have to understand the house in the Middle East in the first century. A house wasn't like ours. You know, it was just actually a rectangle or sometimes a perfect square, one room, and that was it. And then an overhang, you know, where you had a shade where you can wash clothes and stuff like that. If the property was good enough, the property might have had their own well, but you've got to be pretty well-to-do to have your own well. Usually there was a community well. And when Jesus said to his disciples, when he was doing the foot washing thing, you know, and Peter says, "You'll never wash my feet." I've had people wash my feet just spontaneously. That is the most humiliating thing that could happen to you. You know, just why, and I don't know where to hide my head and something. You know, I've had people come weeping and wash my feet. You know, what are you doing this? No. You have to let me do this. I gotta get this thing. Wow, you feel like crawling under a rock. And so I get Peter when he says, no, you'll never do this. No. And Jesus said, well, if I don't wash your feet, you're not going to have any part of me. I could just see like one of those Looney Tune cartoons, pulls out from behind his back, a back scrubber and some soap. He says, okay, wash I got the shampoo too, you know, just do it. Here I am, you know. Okay, I want every part of, you know, go ahead and shower me, Jesus. And I can hear Jesus laughing. And he says, no, it's just your feet. Well, you see, he says, because whoever is washed need only to wash his feet. Now, that doesn't make sense in our society. But when you think of that they could not have indoor bathrooms, you see in the book of Leviticus where it talks about houses in the King James, and I know the scripture is more in Spanish than in English, but I know the King James, it says that when a house has leprosy, have you ever who's seen that? When a house has leprosy, you know, you scrape the wall. And, you know, what do you mean a house has leprosy? Well, that's mold. And so, mold can kill you, if it's in your house. And so, the thing is, it's a spreading disease. And so they described it as leprosy. And so, they couldn't bathe inside. Of course, that's logical. No, nobody did that. That wasn't a thing. And so what they would do is they would go either to the well or to the local river. You didn't build a settlement or a city where there was no water. So you go to that local source, and that's where you bathe. And of course, when you walk back, they don't have sealed shoes. Your feet get dusty. So he that is clean need only wash his feet. You get that? You're following me? And so you've got to understand the context of how the houses were. And so it was just one room, and the entire family lived there. But for the mother-in-law to come and live with him, he had to have money to build another dwelling on his property. And sometimes they had to reinforce the entire house to build something on the roof. That was highly atypical, and it was a sign that he had enough sustenance, well-being, to support his mother-in-law. Not to ask her, it was to honor her. We're going to take care of you in your old age, even though she might have been well-to-do. No, it's me. I've taken your wife, and I've taken you now. Boom. And so he was a successful fisherman. But when Christ found him, he says, do you have anything? He says, well, we fished all night, and, it's a bit of bust. And he says, well, cast the net on the other side. He says, well, that generally doesn't work, but out of respect, we'll do it. And they go out again, And they catch so many fish that he has to ask his business partners, that was his brother, and his and some other business partners they had, James and John, I can explain to you who they are, and to come and help them bring in the fish. And in one account, it says they had so many fish that their boats were at the point of sinking. And as they bring that miraculous catch to the shore, I mean, they could have lived, all of them, for at least a year. All of them for at least a year off that catch. For at least a year off that catch. And he says, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And they left everything to follow him. They left everything. And at one point, when Jesus is talking about the rich man, he says it's harder for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom. That he wasn't literally talking. Christian urban legends will teach something because they don't understand Middle Eastern hyperbole. They say, "Oh, there's a hole in the wall where they would make the camels, who's heard that? And then crawl through that hole." That's the worst way to defend a city. Just to say, in my field, to become a theologian, one of my undergraduate studies is archaeology. So I've done paleontological digs when I was very young, and I've done archaeological digs. I've done numerous archaeological digs. I was part of a team, an archaeological team, that found the city of Ai. And so, yes. And so, like I've been on many other archaeological teams. I was part of the initiative to reinitiate the diggings in the Dead Sea Caves in Qumran. And we found more Dead Sea Scrolls, just fractions of what we already have, but we found more. We found tons of relics, swords, and different things like that of the team. I haven't been able to be an active participant in some of those because a lot of that's happened since I've had my stroke. But I have been back in Israel since then, but not able to be out in those mountains and and doing all that. It's very rigorous. But yeah, what it is, I'm going to go quickly. What they found is that of all the cities, and I've been in archaeological remnants all the way from Dan, which is on the border of Lebanon and Syria, to Beersheba, and that's what it says, from Dan to Beersheba, and what it's talking about is the entire span of what is the Promised Land, or the nation of Israel in the biblical times. And I've been in archaeological remains and all of those things, and all the walls, you never find something like that. There's not that in any of them. What he's talking about quite literally is a camel going through an eye of a needle, which is impossible. It was hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. That's an expression of Hebrew speech. And so Peter said, well, what about us? We've left everything. And he says, okay, you're going to get your reward. So they did get everything.
Introducing the new Zulon Press book, Is Our Gospel the Gospel? By Dr. Prince Maurice Parker. Is Our Gospel the Gospel? Is available in Christian bookstores and online. Purchase it today.